All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The February 18 meeting of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Lynchburg is officially in session. We're going to go through, this is called to order. We'll go through roll call for the members. Pat Mosby.
Here.
Bill Lovern.
Here.
Louise Mitchell.
Here.
George Ann Sneed. I know George Ann's here.
Yeah. She muted.
John Stone.
Here.
Mark Strohsnyder's here. Andy Mueller is still a member, but is absent today. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the January 21st meeting. We did have one correction. We have added Pat to the list of guests in the first or the second paragraph on the first page. And then, of course, we make note in the second page of where she was introduced to the rest of the board. And again, Pat, welcome in your voting capacity now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And appreciate your acceptance to join our group.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other corrections, deletions, comments for the minutes? And if not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that one addition of the correction.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have a second?
A second.
Louise seconds. All right, we'll go through the roll for approval. Pat Mosby.
Yeah, that was Pat, I think.
That was Pat. That was
I'm
me.
sorry. I'm
It
sorry.
was.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll go through the roll call for acceptance. Pat Mosby,
Here.
Bill Lovern,
Yes.
Louise Mitchell,
Here.
George Ann Sneed,
Aye.
John Stone,
Aye.
Mark Strohsnyder's an aye. Next item on the agenda is the Blue Ridge Water Authority Ivy Creek Interceptor Project. And I think Mr. Poff.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, real quick, and just as an overview to you all, just so I can bring Greg up to speed as well, is just from our standpoint, from the EDA standpoint, we received letters, which I forwarded to Ted, about the properties that this project would be possibly seeking easements for. And we are probably, Greg, gonna need to get with GIS and you or whoever you direct me to get maps of the properties and where this pipeline or the easements, whatever is going to go on there, will happen, because these are all, sites and undeveloped properties at this time. And so I would just want, Ted had attempted to take whatever came with those letters and blow that up, but we're all challenged right now to being able to do something like that. And I can certainly go to GIS. I just want to make sure that whatever I do, because I'm not an expert in this field, nor do I know exactly where, the easement needs to be or how that's going to cross the property, that I get with you or you direct me to somebody so that I can give the members, certainly the property committee, to be able to look at this and see, how it may impact, because we are actually, Greg, on the verge of doing a master plan for all of that Wigington Road property that the EDA owns, to look at it once again to see what the best uses of that property would be, and to try to take steps to either, market it to be developed, or if it would be better as residential or something different, that we've got that information when we might go out to market the property. Does that make sense?
Oh, certainly, yes, definitely.
Thank you, Greg. Take it away, my friend. And I included what Greg gave me which was an overview from the Bedford Regional Water Authority. So I really appreciate it, Greg, especially on this morning, for you to be here and just tell us what this means in plain English.
Okay, I'll try. And I do apologize. I cannot get my camera working no matter what I do. So I was all dressed up for you today. So sorry about that. You're not going to get to see me. But can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. That's really what needs to be done. So let me give you a little background on this. This project kind of came up when we started running the sewers out to the industrial park back in the Frito-Lay days. What was that, mid-90s?
Yeah.
Yep.
And Bedford County has always operated a sewage pump station in the Lake Vista community that has been collecting all the sewage from the forest area and then pumping it back over through a long pipeline over to the Tomahawk Creek Basin near Poplar Forest. So now that they got enough growth and I guess enough financial resource backing to extend this gravity sewer up to that pump station to get rid of it, they wanted to enact this project. So basically this project has been looked at for the last 20 years and we've been expecting it. And we're kind of happy to go ahead and see it get done, to be honest with you. There again, I just want to make sure that, I represent the Water Resources Department of the City of Lynchburg. And this is strictly, I'm acting as an introduction to the EDA, for this project. The folks at the Bedford Regional Water Authority and their design team are really the folks that you're going to need to be, speaking with directly, with maybe some technical support from us if you need it, to answer questions or, see what's going to happen. So there's about 7,500 feet of sewer that's being proposed to run through the city, the EDA property, to the city-county line over near, Hawkins Mill Road.
Yeah.
Whatever that road is over there. Can't remember what it is. It's a 24-inch pipe. And just to let you know that the city had a similar project a couple of years ago along the Burton Creek area, and it was a 30-inch pipe. So we're pretty familiar with working with the larger diameter pipe. So I can give you a few pointers on what to expect and maybe what to ask of the design build team to include in their documents and easement, negotiations, if you want to call it that. On the design team, the build team, I never have personally worked with CHA before, but EC Pace is very competent and has a strong reputation for these types of projects. So I think you've got a pretty good team to work with as far as getting this project done and done successfully. EC Pace is definitely not a fly-by-night type contractor. They've been around for years and heavy construction is their forte. So I think that you got a pretty good team going on so far from what we've talked to. As we get talking about the easement acquisitions for the EDA, I suggest maybe bringing in Kate Berger. She's the Department of Public Works right-of-way agent, and she may be able to work with Mr. Craddock and whoever else is involved to get the easement plats correct and make sure that what she has to bring to the table is shown in the easements and things that she's learned over the years. So just a suggestion, maybe bring her on board also. Excuse me. So to talk about a couple of things that I would suggest that maybe we include in the discussions with Bedford, the BRWA folks and the design build team. One thing that we always find very helpful is to have a public meeting for the businesses. It might be in the park on that end of the road, if you will. They can talk about the blasting and the traffic and the access points and things like that. Even though there's not a lot of buildings over in that area, I think the closest one's going to be the River's Edge building, which is about 500 and some feet from where the potential pipeline is going. So they would definitely probably need to be, part of the discussions and, just kind of touching base with everybody. The second thing is that there's probably going to be a lot of rock blasting from our previous experiences along Ivy Creek. So we normally require a vibration monitor be set up during blast. And that's basically just to protect, I guess the property owner, which would be the EDA, liability issues that may be raised, through the blasting, if there's any cracking or anything gets broken, which hopefully if they do it correctly, it won't be a problem, but you never know. So we normally request vibration monitors and also a pre-blast survey in the buildings, just to document any type of cracking, that type of thing. They'll be looking to get temporary access easements. Of course, they've got to get to the project and, start their construction. One path they've talked about is the access road to the chemical building that we have currently in operation. That's a known, kind of pathway and roadway that gets down to where the project is going to start. So I would expect that to be a temporary access easement situation. We normally try to restrict land disturbance on these types of projects. What I mean by that is to give them basically up to a 50-foot right of way to actually build the project, but then have a 20 to 30-foot permanent easement, for the pipeline. You really want to set some limits so the contractor doesn't go out there and have a tree removal, company come in and take down, massive amounts of trees without anybody knowing about it, which has happened. It's not a pretty thing. We need to ask them about a permanent access road along the sewer line. This will be one of their major arteries, if you will, to the forest area. So I can't imagine they're not going to want some type of permanent access, that vehicles and maintenance, trucks can get through to get to the sewer line. And there again, what does that look like? Is it a gravel road? Is it a surface treated road? What type of road is it? The next thing is about the trees. Whatever trees they have to take down, we highly recommend using a shredder on site. Basically, it's a big rotary drum device on a back traco that can actually grind a tree from the top to the bottom in about 5 minutes. Their things are great. And that way you have mulch, along the easement area. You don't have to worry about, stacks of wood and things like that rotting and going into the creek. Rock removal. What are they going to do with the rock if it's going to be removed from the project? Are they going to reuse it as bedding? Or are they going to use it for example, erosion, stabilization along the creek beds or creek banks or something? No unused structures left on the property. We've had situations before where, hey, we're not going to use this manhole, so we're just going to leave it sitting here. 20 years later, the property owner says, well, why don't you come remove this for us? That type of thing. So something to watch out for there. The city has not planned to have any inspectors assigned to this project since it is completely a Bedford Regional Water Authority project. We are going to have kind of a liaison situation where we'll be part of the monthly progress meetings just to understand what's going on, and we can help the EDA with any questions that come up to help kind of make that a smooth transition. But at this point, inspectors will be completely part of the design build process or team. In the future, since you've talked about development of the area, of course, what we've talked about with the BRWA in the past discussions is that if the city needs capacity in the segment of sewer, then we would do a similar process that the county uses to buy capacity from the city, just kind of in reverse. We don't expect, unless you bring in another, Frito-Lay or high water user, that this is going to be much of an issue or a cost. We just don't see a whole lot of water usage for the property that's left, back on this back side of the industrial park. But that would be something that, we would, of course, involve everyone if that actually happens. And I touched a little bit about creek bank erosion. That's something that we really need to watch because we don't want them to go in there and damage the creek banks and not restore them. But of course, that's just going to lead to more erosion, through your property. And let's see, my last point of discussion is, yeah, if the Industrial Park Road, Jefferson Ridge Parkway is ever extended, it'll go over top of their sewer line. So I would suggest that, we plan for a future road extension, because I think there's going to be a lot of fill on top of that sewer pipe, and that needs to be taken into account during the pipe design. So, we can work with them on, what that looks like and get that corrected. So I think all in all, it's going to be a good project. Of course, what happens to your property is up to you. I guess, do you have any questions for me?
Oh, Lord.
Greg, you said the city won't have an inspector or supervisor per se, but since they're using DEQ funding, does DEQ come in and oversee to make sure it's meeting all the requirements that should be in place?
Yeah, if they actually use Virginia Resource Authority, VRA money, or DEQ money as we call it also, they will have assigned a construction manager that will come and be part of the progress meetings. We'll make a monthly trip out there to look at things. They'll have to do Davis-Bacon wage analysis. They'll have to use American Iron and Steel criteria. So yes, they would have someone that kind of oversees the project in a broad sense. It will not be a daily inspector, inspection type inspector. So I would have some more discussions with the project design team as to what the inspection is going to look like.
Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bill Lovren. I'm trying to read the map on page 65, and I'm really having some trouble with understanding how much of the pipeline will go over our property, for how long of a distance. What is there an option of it not being on our property? I see something here about an alternate route for jack and bore construction. Is there an alternate route? And is there an option of us just selling them the whole property, or give me, I need a little more background on why it has to go across our property, what's the distance it has to go, and how many of the parcels will it affect?
Okay, great. Good answers. I mean, good questions. I'll give you good answers too. Okay, if you follow the solid line, that's kind of the creek line, if you will, as it goes around this peninsula. And that's really what this big outcropping is like a thumb sticking out in the creek area. And what they propose to do is look at, maybe instead of going around that thumb, if you will, they would go through it with a bore, basically a tunnel, to get from one side to the other side. And then they would start following the Ivy Creek, Basin Creek, on up to the Bedford County city line. So as far as options, there really aren't any options you really have to follow the creek line, or else you're going to be, going through massive, mountains of rock and, soil. And, the creek bottom is normally where a sewer line would be run, because it is the lowest spot, on the property, so to speak. As far as your property, unless we have an overall map, which if I could share my screen, I've got my GIS up, but basically it goes through all your property once it kind of gets past the river's edge property, if you will. And you've got several large parcels that go out to the city-county line, and it would basically follow Ivy Creek all the way out to that point at the city-county line, if that helps.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a distance in yards or meters or miles or whatever. I don't have any perspective on that at all.
Okay, it's about 7,500 feet is what they're showing on this plan that's attached as part of their proposal.
Got
so, a little bit over about a mile and a half or so.
Got it. Thank you.
It's a pretty good run through your property, definitely.
And they'll have to have a road or some sort of an access road running through all of the properties for this.
Normally, you build it, as you build the sewer line. So it'd probably be, like a 12-foot gravel road is usually what we install next to the sewer line so that, you can access with pickup trucks or whatever needs to be done to repair it, maintain it.
Got it. Thank you.
And there again, I would suggest that, once y'all kind of digest all this information, that, we set up a meeting with the design build team so that they can present maybe, other facts or other pertinent, criteria that they'll use as part of this project, of course. And it is going to be fairly deep. So, this is going to be slow construction. I mean, you're talking maybe some places 20 foot deep, which is pretty deep for a sewer line, but that's just the way the topography lays and the existing sewers run that they have to tie into.
So Greg, is this an 8-inch line? Is this 10-inch line?
It's a 24-inch line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it is being sized for additional, future capacity needs in the forest area, basically. I think they go out to 2050, maybe. So all this has been, we've got to take all this information and, it's stuff, it's calculations that we've been looking at over the years, and we've kind of prepared for it. In fact, this is really going to, our chemical station that we have out there behind, was it one of your properties off of Tessie, behind Tessie Plastics or whatever? That's because there's such low flow in our large interceptor sewer that this is going to tie into, and it's creating hydrogen sulfide, which is causing problems in the sewer. And so we have to pump a chemical into the sewer in order to neutralize that gas. With this additional flow, we're thinking that that's going to be enough flow to get that problem taken care of, and we can take that chemical station offline. So it'll be a good thing for us in that respect.
Greg, I'm also confused about you using the word we. I thought this was a Bedford project, and now you're saying it's tied into our sewer lines as well?
Yes, this whole project has to tie into our Ivy Creek interceptor, which was built for Frito-Lay back, like I said, in the 90s.
Okay.
So yes, it is going to tie into our system.
Okay. So it's not Bedford County doing this, it's we're doing this.
No, Bedford County, this is a Bedford County project. So they're the ones actually tying into our sewer line. They'll actually physically make a connection into the last manhole that's the city manhole, so to speak. And then we'll accept their flow at that point and goes on into the, collection system.
Well, I thought it went to something at Poplar Forest. That's outside the city limits, isn't it? You said it went to a Poplar Forest collection place.
Yes, the city has sewers out towards Poplar Forest. Basically it stops at the city-county line in that area.
Right.
And right now they're pumping over 221 and Homestead Circle Road, and it goes over into a collection system that goes into our system at that point. So
Gotcha.
that connection will basically be abandoned.
All right, Greg, for those of us laymen that don't deal with this every day, the economics of it. So we are going to be collecting Bedford County sewer waste at a rate per gallon, meter, however it's done, and we will receive income from taking, collecting, and treating their sewer. Is
okay. Yeah, this is going to be kind of a complex answer, so I'll try to simplify it somewhat. Back in the days that the regional wastewater plant was built, and also all the regional sewer lines, which would be like Dreaming Creek, Tomahawk Creek, Ivy Creek, Cheese Creek, the counties were allowed to buy capacity in those collection systems and also at the wastewater plant. And so we go through this a very long, arduous calculation process to give the counties capacity. And basically what they're doing is they have bought capacity in the existing connection that I was talking about on Tomahawk Creek, and they're going to move that capacity requirement over to this point. And so they've actually bought in capacity in our system at this point to get these flows as they stand now. Now, when they go in the future, they're going to have to buy more capacity as their capacity needs go up. So at this point, they've actually bought enough capacity to not have any transaction of money at this point. But in the future, they'll definitely have to buy more capacity in our system, in the city system.
So every time they come up with a 400 home project off Perryville Road, that's going to put more stress on their system, and they're going to have to rely more on our capacity.
Correct. And also at the city-county line, as part of this project, there's going to be a flow meter installed so that we'll be able to track that, how much capacity they're actually using and keep track of, okay, they're going up 50% this year, or, they're proposing a big, gigantic, project, and it's going to use up all their capacity. And we'll know, pretty quickly how things are going out there.
And our treatment plants have the capacity for this increased usage?
Yes, we're only talking, we're talking in round terms, a couple 100,000 gallons a day, which is really not that much compared to our system capacity. So, their flows are relatively small compared to, say, our CSO flows that hit the wastewater plant.
For now.
For now, correct.
But if the pipe is underground, it really doesn't matter what the flow is. I mean, once we put it in, we don't really care. How close to the edge of our property, how much of I can't tell from the map how much of the depth of the property will be affected by the pipe and the road. How much of the property are we losing? What percentage of each lot are we losing? What's our economic, the impact to us on reselling the property of doing this?
Okay, I can't give you an exact figure on that because I haven't really looked at that, that terms, but basically you're following the creek. So most of the time, areas close to the creek are not buildable anyway. They're more of a conservation area or green space, something like that. So as far as, impact to your entire property, I'd say it's very minimal. In fact, once the sewer's there, we buy capacity, or EDA buys capacity for a client that comes in, builds something, and you've got sewer there. So, it could be a win-win situation really for both parties.
Got it. Thank you. That's excellent.
And Greg, as they're building this, do they install potential taps so that we can use that as a selling point?
Well, currently there's really nothing out there, so I don't think they plan on putting any taps in. But that could certainly be something that we could discuss. If you feel like there's a location or locations, certainly install an 8-inch connection, which is going to be minimal cost. We can definitely have discussions about that. Yes.
I mean, while they're tearing it up anyway, if that's there, it certainly would be another selling point for potential expansion in the park.
Correct. And if you have a creek, another smaller side creek that comes in, that might be a good location to put a tap, because there again, the sewer by gravity will follow that low spot of the creek, going down to the larger Ivy Creek. So I think that definitely could be looked at.
Greg, what's the timeline on this? Because as I told you at the beginning, the EDA has owned this property for many, many years, and we are getting ready to pull the trigger on doing a master plan for this area to determine access is an issue here. Going across the creek and getting access, and then access even on Wigington Road is an issue as well. Building a road down in here is an issue. So, it's almost like, even though I know that you're saying it'll be minimal, probably because of where the pipe goes over, I'm just thinking, if I could have that master plan that gave me a better idea, or that the EDA could have a better idea about what needs to happen with this property, with these properties here, then, that would give them a little better thought process in working through this, and maybe what to ask for.
Okay, sure. On page 63 of the PDF attachment, that's their schedule that they proposed.
Okay.
And if you look at that, you can see that the design easements. It's a very aggressive schedule. They're looking to begin schedule or construction in May of 2021. So, you know, they're looking at a 19-month duration, construction duration. So probably, you know, about the fall of 2022, they're looking to have this thing in operation. So a very aggressive schedule, in my opinion, but that's what they propose. And also, I've noticed that some of the wording, when I tried to reduce this PDF to make sure I could get it to everybody, and some of the wording seems to have gotten skewed or left out or something. It's really strange. So the master proposal was, you know, didn't look like this. It had complete, you know, sentences and, you know, spelling. So I apologize for that. I don't know what happened. At least that's what mine looks like.
Yeah. So I think we have, you know, I think we really have two things, you know, to consider. And, you know, I would just say, Greg, when you all work on these types of things, do you bring, do you do this all in-house with Walter, or do you bring outside help in to negotiate or navigate all of this?
Well, we normally rely on Kate Berger to do the easements. But for example, we have a project in Blue Ridge Farms that needs to have like 30 easements. And she just said, you know, I don't have the time to do that. So we brought in an outside consultant, which is very expensive, by the way, to do the easement acquisition. But as far as this goes, since it's basically one property owner of the EDA, I can't imagine it'd be, you know, too onerous to have her assist in this with Mr. Craddock or however y'all want to go, you know, about this. Now, there will be an easement plat. So that plat will be generated by the design build team. It will show the easements, the location, the property lines. So you'll have a formal, you know, plat that shows exactly what you're agreeing to, you know, as far as easements.
Greg, will that have the temporary easements on it as well for the construction?
Normally, Kate does a letter agreement for temporary access easements. Personally, I would think that in this case, I would ask for a access easement to be platted. So
Yeah.
you see the entire scope of their work.
Yeah.
So I would just want to make sure that Ted's comfortable with all this, because this is way outside of, we have a lot more things to consider than the city usually does. Because you are looking at, you know, the potential development of the property, as well as, you know, all of the tenants in Ivy Creek Industrial Park, you know, are going to need to be let know. And, you know, we need to fully understand this project and how it might impact at all, because the chemical, if I'm not mistaken, the chemical building that Greg's referring to where the road goes right around BWXT. So, you know, I'm just saying that you all are looked at as promoting business. So we don't want to have, we want to make sure that there's a full, you know, understanding of what is going to occur there, because you all will not be able to say just because we're the city or just because we're Bedford County, we get, you know, we get to move forward and do all of this. You will need to be conscientious of how any of this may impact those folks or potentially impact the property there. So I would, you know, I can get the ball rolling, you know, on the master plan part of it and tell the, you know, the consultants that all of this is going to occur. I just want to make sure, Greg, because there's a big disconnect from city departments understanding, you know, of actually what the EDA does and how that all functions, right? So, I mean, even talking to Kate, I'm sure she'd do us a solid, but it's just, I've always found that to be challenging.
Well, the impact of this on the master plan, it looks like to me, the authority should have some grip on what the master plan is going to say with regard to these lots that the easement's going to affect.
Yeah, and that was the reason I asked Ted of what the timeline was, because we're so close with that. I will get off that when we get finished here. I'll call and find out, what we're looking at there. But I think,
Okay.
I think that we want to, if that is at all possible, where we could look at that, Ted, I totally agree with you. Because we really have, very expensive access issues
Yeah,
to these properties.
yeah.
Is anyone who's working on your master plan, if I may ask?
Probably Draper Aiden.
Okay.
And Greg, I appreciate you more than you know. I really
Oh, no, no,
appreciate you
it's
coming
hard
on
to
board, because I would have, I would have been totally lost here, and I understand that this will ultimately be a good thing and move forward, but there's just so much that can, occur, especially with, we've got a brand new property owner right beside River's Edge Furniture. He's putting a new building in and doing a lot of, hiring people and doing all kinds of stuff. I just want to make sure that everybody that's over there in that park fully has a grip on whatever is going to go on during the construction and how it may impact any of them.
Mhm. Certainly. Any other questions I can help you with? And if you like, Margette, I'll send my notes that I've been talking about to you, and you can
Thank you,
distribute
Greg.
them to the other members if you like, or whatever.
Yeah, and Greg, I might just circle back, and Ted, please, whatever, we need to do there, I will move forward on talking to, about the master plan part of it, but,
Right. Well, it sounds like that most of the intercept is in the creek bed, but we really ought to know how it affects those lots back there.
Well, where it crosses through the lot is the
Yeah.
main.
Yeah,
piece.
and I frankly, Greg, had trouble reading the plats there. I tried to copy them, and I didn't have much luck. If we could actually get them to give us a copy of the plans, it would really be helpful.
So
Yes,
Ted,
they're actually working on the plans now. So, what you have is that was kind of generated as a pre-bid or pre-proposal, route. It's not going to change much, I don't think, but an actual layout is what they're working on at this point. So,
Okay.
we'll need to get you in contact with them and let them come in and do their show for you.
Okay.
So Craig, they will actually present to Ted an easement agreement to be reviewed before.
Yes, it'll be a plat and an easement document. And it might be, we could suggest using something that the city uses normally, or it might be something that Bedford County uses. I just don't know.
Okay.
So this is really not something that would come to vote currently, right, Ted?
No, we need
Purely
a lot
discussion.
more. We need a lot more information.
Okay. But we also see it's got a May 18 start date, so it probably would be at the next meeting.
I doubt if they'll certainly won't have the easement prepared by then. I doubt it.
Yeah, I think their schedules, like I said, pretty aggressive. So
It's a little on the aggressive side.
Yeah. I just,
our past
Can't start
experiences-
without these easements, right?
right.
correct.
That's right. They can't start until we've agreed on what the easement's
Yeah.
gonna look like.
Right.
so, and I don't want to hold them up, but we definitely need to, this master plan, the timing of that is just so close that if they have to wait, for whatever we need done on that side of it, as well as, you know, there needs to be, like Greg suggested, some kind of public meeting, and getting that had to happen, or having something during the pandemic might be a little challenging. But we need all of the details that might at all impact any business in and around that park.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, not just for future business, but the
No.
existing folks.
Right,
No.
the existing ones.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Greg at this time?
And again, I apologize for my camera not working, but hopefully I got the
That's
message.
okay, Greg, you were here. We appreciate it.
Greg,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for your input. I'm
Okay,
sure this
just,
won't be the last we'll hear from you.
I don't know, I've been around for a long time, so I might be around for a few more years. All right, y'all take care and be safe.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Greg.
Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Thanks very
Greg.
much.
All right, and since this was just a discussion topic, then there's no action necessary.
No action necessary.
We'll move on to the next item, which is Ms. Gallagher is going to talk to us about the audit.
Morning. Hope you all are well.
Hey, Amy.
Amy. Good morning, Amy.
I'm assuming we have a copy of the audit in this package.
It's not in there. It's in the Dropbox.
Amy, is
I
the
can try to share.
draft, is that is the final product,
The
which-
final product
Yeah.
is out there. Yes.
which we had is marked as draft?
Oh, no.
No, there's a real one out there too.
I can possibly share my screen. If that,
That would be great if you could do that.
see what I've got here.
Amy, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen. You should have that capacity.
Tell me if you can see it.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
All right, great. Okay. All right, so this is the final audit report, which I understand is out there somewhere. And it's an unmodified opinion. We didn't have any, obviously, part of this year was a COVID year. Luckily for the EDA, No CARES Act money came in before June 30, 20. So that'll be a whole nother ball of wax next year to test. But as of June 30, 20, we have an unmodified opinion, no material misstatements, no significant deficiencies. You all did go to QuickBooks Online or using that during the year. And Brown Edwards is doing a nice job of making sure that's getting reconciled. We looked at the controls around that. We didn't have any issues related to the controls. Having a third party prepare your financials on a regular basis and oversee them is wonderful. That's a great control. So you have an unmodified opinion here. And then this is management's discussion and analysis. And I like this because this really is a comparative from 19 to 20. Your audited financials do not have to show 19 numbers. But I like this document because I think it really gives you an overview of where you really stand from one year to the next. And 2020 compared to 2019. I'm gonna pull this up. Really, big changes. The biggest impact that you had during 2020 were there were two properties that were sold. You had Mill Race and you had Carter Glass. And combined, one had a gain of about $300,000. One had a loss of about $900,000, the Carter Glass property. And that was a business, that was obviously a development decision that was made. So that impacted the properties that were available for the other assets, which is my mouse over here, there we go. That impacted this other assets because obviously you sold two properties that were on your books for about $1.2 million and they're no longer. And that was the biggest transactions during the year. Your investments are about the same. Your cash is very similar to the prior year. We confirmed all the bank balances. We didn't have any issues. Your liabilities haven't changed significantly. So all in all, your net position is $14 million at the end of June 30, 20 versus $15 million And that is really, the decrease is because of the sale of those two properties and the loss that was recognized. And that's the statement of financial position. But if you look at the operating revenues, during the year, you did receive a $623,000 incentive grant that was then passed through to the Virginian, but no significant incentive grants were received. However, you did pay out $920,000 of incentive payments, $500,000 to Pacific Life, $200,000 to Concentrics, and some other commitments. So that was a big swing. So your expenses look like they're up $976,000, but really it's a matter of when you receive those incentive payments, and then when the decisions and when the conditional requirements are met by the company to receive that incentive. And then here's your loss, $500,000 investment income, and that's really the loss on the two properties I just mentioned, Mill Race and Carter Glass combined. You did make about $300,000 on the Mill Race property sale, which offset that loss for Carter Glass. So all in all, your decrease in net position of $654,000, but no concerns there because obviously that was the non-cash loss on the sale of those properties. Any questions on that? Okay.
Amy,
Yes.
I'm curious why the loss is considered investment loss. We weren't carrying, were we carrying those properties as for resale, or are we carrying them for investment?
They're held as properties for resale, and any properties that are held for resale are considered investment properties. So they're not properties that are in use by the EDA for rent or for any of those other items. You have a whole list of properties that are owned and that are always available for resale, and those are considered investment properties.
Could they, for clarity, could they be considered something other than investments? Because it confuses them with our investment. We have bonds, we have things like that. That's a general category. If somebody looked at this and thought, how could you lose that much money investing when that's not what really happened here? It was a piece of property that we were given and we were asked to manage. So is there any way that could be designated differently than an investment?
In accordance with GAAP, they're considered investments because they're held for resale. And so anytime a property is held for resale, it's considered an investment property. So from a classification standpoint, it really is an investment loss because over time that property, what it was resold for, the gain or loss is really considered an investment gain or loss.
Got it. Okay, that answers my question. Just asking. That just stood out to me as being a little bit
Right.
Unclear, or somebody might not realize that's why that number is there. But I'm comfortable if that's GAAP.
Well, and that's a good question. So Bill, if I go down to your statement of activities, if you look under non-operating revenues and expenses, we've got it broken out as loss on sale of property held for development and sale. Mm-hmm. Just in the summary, in the MD&A, it's all grouped together. However, we do break it out on the financial statements, so it's more evident. Because as you say, you didn't have a loss. You actually had interest, net interest.
Exactly. Well, that answers my question, Amy. Thank you.
So we really have a truer look of our P&Ls look more true now than they did before, because we were carrying an asset there that was overinflated.
Right.
Way overinflated.
An old decrepit building at a very high valuation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was on your books at $970,000.
And Bluff Walk is still ahead of us in that category. So just so we know that there are more things on our balance sheet like that.
Multiple.
Yes. And that's an ongoing conversation. I know Margette and Brown Edwards and I had a conversation regarding the valuation of Bluff Walk. We decided not to directly address that right now because there were, so many other issues going on. But that is something that needs to be addressed. Whether there needs to be a write down of the value of that property And I know Brown Edwards is looking at that because we raised that question during the audit process.
Was that something municipalities do on a regular basis, is, through appraisals, through assessments, whatever, is go in and reevaluate what, assets just like this that are being held on the books? Because it doesn't really give you a true feel for what we have technically, other than our liquidity. I mean,
And that's a great question. In accordance with government standards, accounting standards, you are not, and even with GAAP, you are not required to go in and look at the fair value of real estate and adjust it. However, if those properties are held for investment, long-term investments, you are. So if it's an operating property, and let's say it's a building that you are currently renting and its value declines significantly, because it's an operating asset, you don't decrease the fair value. However, if you've got some, as you do, you've got 3.3 million of assets held for resale, that is something you can go in and do. And it's obviously a non-cash transaction. You take that loss when you readjust it to what you consider fair value. But yes, you can do that. And the issue with investment in Bluff Walk is that, that 510 is what you originally put in at cost. It's never been adjusted to, we look at the K1 that we get for that, and it's never been adjusted for that. And so that's raised some questions of whether, will you recover that 510,000 over time? That's a conversation that needs to be had. And do you just go ahead and write it down, or write it down to what is a fair value? Because
Amy, this is sort of a landmine on our balance sheet, just as the Carter Glass property is and is showing to be. Is there any way that we can sort of depreciate them? We don't have to write them all the way to fair value or what we think, or we can start taking a little bit at a time to bring them so that they aren't a big movement when we actually sell something like Carter Glass. Do we have the right to do that?
So depreciation is only for assets that are in use. So you can't directly depreciate it, $50,000 a year or over 39 years, which is commercial property. But you can do what they call impairment. And you look at that asset and you say, is it impaired, and how much is it impaired? And it's not something that you necessarily do over time. It's at a point in time. So that's why when I was talking to Margette about it, and I think I mentioned it to Ted as well, that we need to look at that at a point in time and determine what is it worth, and then you write it off at that point. Now, you don't go back and write it up, but if it's impaired at a certain time, you go back and write it off.
So you can't do it. You can't do it gradually then and not have big impact on our balance sheet.
Right. No.
Okay.
You look at, right now, $3.3 million land and buildings held for development sale, and a lot of that is the Wigington Road properties. What do we truly have that much in assets sitting there?
Could you scroll to the list? Isn't there a list that shows them all? Could we see that for a minute?
I don't know if there is.
I thought there was, but maybe not.
I've got a spreadsheet certainly that's got every single one, but I don't remember there being one.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
No. But I have a spreadsheet. I could probably pull it up. If you want to bear with me 1 second. And I don't know if you all are seeing all this or not.
Yeah, small.
I'm gonna pull it up. I'm logged into the office. So
Very impressive.
That is amazing.
I think that is a good point, though, that Bill and Mark, is that, we know that, we certainly know that Wigington Road and the properties there are, may not sell for what the assessed value is. Being able to look at all that, ahead of time and think about it.
They're optimistically.
Like there'd be a downside to it.
Yeah, exactly, Bill. Exactly.
And we shouldn't have to explain when we sell something at market why that's a loss on our balance sheet. Yeah. We should try to prevent those kind of landmines from anybody looking at and us having to explain. If we're doing nothing wrong, there's no reason why we should have to explain a loss like that. It should be we should be able to handle it on the way down, I think, but maybe not.
So I pulled up the list of what, well, this was the list. At the beginning of the year, it was 4.3 million. And, obviously you sold cost basis $1 million during the year. So you're left with 3.3. And this shows you, as you say, all the Wigington properties, Jefferson Ridge Parkway, what the cost basis was of those properties when they were originally purchased or developed. And obviously, I don't have the history to these because this is long before.
Yeah, and they weren't purchased, they were given to us.
They
They were given. They were given. Yeah.
And
The
I'm
gift
happy,
keeps on giving.
Margette, I'll email this spreadsheet to you so that you have a list of it.
Yeah, I have a list.
Okay. Does that help answer? Okay. So let's see if I can get back to where I was. Let's see here.
And Mark, to your point, we don't want people looking at our balance sheet thinking we are bigger and more powerful than we really are. We'd rather be underestimated than overestimated, I would think.
And again, if we happen to sell some of these Wigington Road properties, get back to the Carter Glass building at a substantial decrease. I want to avert red flags at every opportunity. But I guess when you write that down, you're gonna throw up a red flag too. So it's
Let's take it one time or the other.
it's
But
gonna happen.
unless you could, the impairment could be like gradual, but you're saying impairment isn't, we're not allowed to impair it, on an annual basis.
Unfortunately, because it's not asset use.
Yeah, talk about it as a one-time deliberate adjustment. I don't know that that is a red flag.
Yeah. And I think there's also things that don't necessarily show up, which are when you are fully aware, and it may not be how the assessments are calculated, but when you are fully aware of the challenges of a particular piece of property or access to that property, or that you have got a tremendous amount of infrastructure that is going to need to be done, that to me should be where an impairment is considered, because it is things like that are not going to reflect in an assessment, because they do the outside of something, or they do it based on comparables or whatever. When you dig really down in there to some of these, and you've got access issues and you've got frontage issues and those types of things, you might be able to, I think everything that you've done has an explanation to it that is based on what the mission of the EDA is there to do.
Well, and to your point, Margette, you've
Exactly.
got, when you look at these, the land and buildings and the investment of Bluff Walk, you're showing $3.8 million in assets, but are they really worth $3.8 million?
Yeah, that's my only
Oh.
question.
They're not.
We take 3.8 million right now if somebody wants to write a check.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. So we kind of hit the high points. There's nothing, your liabilities haven't changed. That your assets are the things that need to be addressed. And I know Margette and Ted and I have already talked about that. Grant incentives, obviously that was 989,000, which was more than historically it's been, but that was because the 500,000 that was paid to Pacific Life. And then the loss. So really, all in all, I mean, you can explain the decrease in change in net position very readily. Not a non-issue as I see it. No particular new footnotes, thankfully, not this year anyway. Everything was pushed back due to COVID. We do have a footnote in here related to COVID, which everybody's getting these days in their financials.
Yeah.
So Amy, next year when we have to deal with the CARES Act money, that purely just be a pass-through, right? And
It is, but
have
here's
effect?
yeah, that's a good question, Mark. Here's the issue. The CARES Act money is considered federally funded money, and it falls under the single audit requirement. So the feds have a requirement where there's all this additional work done related to federal flow-through money. So the CARES Act is what they call single audit, OMB A133 funding, and it'll be subject to a totally, as we sort of call it a program audit. So it'll flow through your financials. However, we've got to come in and do all a bunch of testing related to the expenditures. So we got to make sure that if you got 4.5 million, that that 4.5 million went out to the right recipients, the documentation's there. It's all about all of these checks and balances for government standards.
So Amy, should we then be reserving some of the CARES money to pay you?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, no, that's a great question. It is, and I know we had a conference call back, I think in July or August when this all came out. It's a lot of extra work, and we're finding too, it's not just governmental agencies, but also private entities. If they get over 750,000 or expend more than 750,000 in CARES Act money, that they're also subject to this single audit requirement. So the limit is 750. If you expend more than 750, you have to do what they call a single audit.
So Amy, you're at the mercy of Interfaith Outreach and Miriam's House and LNCAG, because we have passed money through to those entities. You're going to have to wait for their accountants and their end of the year.
No, so what we have to do is we have to make sure that when you expended that money to those agencies, that you followed the federal guidelines in paying it out, that they were applicable recipients, that they provided specific documentation. There is a whole list, and the guidance is still coming out, Mark, because this is new to everybody. But there are specific requirements, compliance requirements. And under a single audit, there are 13 compliance buckets that you could fall into. And to be honest, I don't know how many of those 13 compliance requirements are required under the CARES Act. The documentation, there was a document that came out about a month ago, and I haven't looked at it yet. But we aren't going to be subject to Miriam's House and those agencies. We're going to be your documentation is going to be subject to the federal flow through. And the one thing that you will be required to do is make sure you're getting reports from those agencies that they use the funds in accordance with. And that might be a compliance issue, but I have to confirm that. I don't know that for a fact.
So you can't really estimate how much your bill is going to be to us based on CARES. You can't even give us an estimate of what we should reserve of that money at this point.
I would love to be able to tell you that, Bill, but I think the problem, I know the problem is, as we all know, just like with PPP and just like with the retention credits and all these other things, it's a moving target right now. And so what they actually will end up with as far as the compliance requirements, hopefully they'll know by this June. So
all of the CARES money going to compliance and auditing. Yeah, good. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
I know.
Well, Amy, when you talk about a single audit, it's the city as well, I guess.
Yes, it is. Yes, because they got, I think, if I'm correct, Ted, 20 million.
Yeah.
Of which they flowed through 4.5 to the EDA.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so they will be falling under the same federal requirements.
Wow.
Yeah.
So will you be billing them or us or both?
Just you.
And Bill, just
Who
to
did you
clarify
think, Bill?
we do have administrative funds to assist with these services from our allocation from the long-term recovery team.
Right.
So
we had that conversation back when this all
we had
started.
that conversation on the front end, and Amy also reviewed applications and things like that. I mean, our setup on the front end. So we hope we're in good shape there.
I won't belabor these footnotes. I know you have other things on your agenda, but if certainly I'll share the spreadsheet that I just showed with Margette. She can share that with you all. And if there's anything else, you all can let me know.
Thank you, Amy.
You're certainly welcome.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so
If
much,
any
Amy,
questions, just let
as
me know.
always. All right, folks. We are now down to staff report. Ms. Upshur.
Thanks again, Amy.
You're welcome. I'm trying to get out. I promise.
Stay
Stay on
warm.
if you like.
You can
You
stay as
too.
long as you like.
The struggle.
So the audit, the finalized audit is in your Dropbox, I believe. If anybody needs it in a PDF, just let me know. And also there is a Bluff Walk investor update that I received on the 10th of February that's also in your Dropbox. And Amy, that's adorable.
In
Oh, no.
Leave that up. Leave that up. It's better than a cat.
It's amazing.
Carl, I'm trying to help here.
Oh, gosh.
I thought I was sharing my screen.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'm going to go through, I'll go through these, the staff, you all can read this, but we also put the legislative agenda for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership and the Virginia Economic Developers Association in your Dropbox as well. We gave Pat hopefully an enjoyable orientation.
Yes.
And we want to welcome her again to the EDA. We have a lot of things going on here. Obviously, we're putting together a presentation on the CARES Act. The applications that Amy was just referring to allowed us to go deep with information on a lot of businesses that ordinarily we would not have that type of information. So we're putting that together to share with you all, to share with the long-term recovery team, which is made up of the Commissioner of Revenue, the Finance Director, the City Assessor, and the Deputy City Manager and Community Development Director, Kent White, and I'm on that committee as well, but we're going to share that information with them. And then give it to council. So we are working on all of that. And we're working on several prospects, which we will, one of them's not a prospect, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And we've done the blueprint reset. So we went out when the pandemic occurred, we went out to the business community to ask them what our focus should be. As you know, the blueprint itself, the blueprint for opportunity is got a lot of data in it that we worked off of, but it is very involved in terms of action items. It was really meant to be an actionable strategic plan. And we went down into that because we didn't know what the world is going to look like. We got 75 of the business community, civic leaders to weigh in on what was important. We've done surveys. And so we have really narrowed that document down to, 3 really core goals. And we've sent that back out. We have a newsletter going out today to everybody, but I sent to all of you all, I think last week, what those values were and then what those 3 goals are. And I sent that individually to each one of the businesses and civic leaders that joined in with us to do that. So we're really glad to have that out. I think we're doing a press release on that. Anna, is that correct?
We will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we also held on Friday, we held a visioning workshop for a citywide brand, which I think if we hadn't done that via Zoom, we had at least 60 people that came to that workshop. It was great. It was all done on Zoom. We had breakout rooms and polling and all of that kind of thing. they hung in there with us for 3 hours. John and Pat were part of that. And so it was just really, really great because it's a first pass at really from a community engagement, kind of standpoint of, how we see ourselves as a city and how we sell ourselves as a city for talent and tourism and all of those things. So these are big, heavy lift projects that are going on in the midst of CARES and all of the other things here. So I'm really, really proud of the team. And, I'll just give a shout out again to Melissa, who has all of the CARES Act, all of that QuickBooks Online, all of that. Melissa's doing all of that, in-house here and looking at, individual items. I mean, really seriously from a audit perspective and from an accounting perspective, you all encumber funds for incentives based on your policy. And the fact that 3 of those got paid out in 1 year, as we all know, can make a big difference in how things look. But that's what you're here, to be able to do. So it never is going to level up exactly right because you don't know when. You have a pretty good idea based on the performance agreements, but when those, incentives will be paid out or when we will get a bond. So we have a bond on the horizon that we'll probably hold a public hearing for with Virginia Episcopal School in March. And given, I am not really sure about how the technology works yet, but I talked to Ted a little bit about it yesterday, and most likely we will hold that public hearing in person in City Council chambers. And for those that I do not know if City Council will be, whether City Hall will be open at that time, but we would have the doors open for the public hearing. I don't know if the technology has been put in there yet that allows for somebody to do a Zoom type of situation in council. But like if you don't want to come to City Hall, we will do the best we can to have you be able to call in so that you can participate. At least that way you can hear what's going on, and make sure we test all that, Louise, and everybody that couldn't hear the last time we tried something. Make sure we get all that straight before we have the public hearing. So that would be at what I'm planning for is for that to be at the March meeting. So we're not changing the date on when you meet. We would just do the public hearing for VES at that time. So we are in the midst of budget. So the budget, they will start meeting. The budget will start to be presented, I believe, in March. And council will meet every week to discuss the budget, but they will still have their regular 7:30 meetings as well. So we are working on those types of things. Special events for the city is now under the Office of Economic Development. And so Anna and Emmeline have been fielding the calls for what has already been potentially scheduled in accordance with how we can do any of that from a pandemic perspective. And then gearing up to try to streamline that process and have that process be something where moving forward in the future, our goal would be to try and take events that are already legacy events already happening within the city, as well as cultivating and trying to procure other events to come to the city and trying to streamline that process, especially when they need to use city property. So really Our main purview will be Riverfront Park and the Bluff Walk as places that we would really control. Then we'll work with police and public works and all those folks for road races. And the stadium would be Parks and Rec still. So we will just be the lead when it comes to anybody coming looking to want to do an event on city property within the city. So that's just so exciting. Just another pile of work. But anyway, it'll all be fine. So that's pretty much, you all can read the rest of this. We're taking it day by day in terms of reopening the museum or the visitor center. We're working with, tourism is working really hard with anybody that is thinking about holding events within the city or working with any of the colleges that are bringing in events. So we're meeting with the Commonwealth Games to figure out what that can possibly look like. But all of this is filtered through the eyes of the health department and where we are in terms of the pandemic. And we also worked with, this office worked with securing the location for the mass vaccines.
Good job.
Good.
Thank you. All right. Anyone have any questions, other questions for Margette or Anna at this time? Are there any unannounced projects that need to be discussed in closed session?
We need to go into closed session.
Okay.
Somebody needs to make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 2.23711A5 of the Code of Virginia to discuss a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made.
I will make that motion. Motion made, but
And John Stone is second. Bill Leverns made the motion. John Stone second. We'll go through the roll call. Louise Mitchell,
Yes.
Pat Mosby,
Yes.
Bill Levern,
yes.
Georgianne Sneed,
Yes.
John Stone,
Yes.
Mark Strohsnyder's a yes.
Do I need to go close my,
We'll vote all those in favor of coming out of closed session. Louise Mitchell,
Yes.
Pat Mosby,
Yes.
Bill Levern,
yes.
Georgianne Sneed,
Yes.
John Stone,
Aye.
Mark Strohsnyder is a yes. We're officially out of closed session. Would someone like to make a motion and a second?
To
For
each
the-
member's knowledge that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements of the Virginia Code, and only such matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or let me see, considered.
All right,
Somebody-
so regarding project links, I will make a motion that we encumber according to our incentive worksheet and subject to performance agreements and all other protocols and activities that we would normally partake to encumber such funds.
Good.
Very well done. Is
How
there a
was that? And speaking in circles.
Okay.
Like a
Mark,
true
take-
lawyer, like a true
Take
lawyer.
take a roll call vote on the. on
Did you
the-
get a second? Did you
Okay,
get a second?
Louise Mitchell second.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go through roll call. Signify by yay or nay. Louise Mitchell,
Yes.
Pat Mosby,
Yay.
Bill Levern,
Yay.
Georgianne Sneed,
Yes.
John Stone made the motion. Mark Strohsnyder, yay. Motion passes. Is there any other business for the committee at this time? We do have an incentive committee meeting that will follow immediately the conclusion, and be cognizant the next meeting will be on March the 18th at 2021. Margette, so we're assuming this will be in council chambers?
Yeah, but I will confirm all that. I just didn't want you to, your calendar should remain the same as it has been, 8:30 at that time. I just want to clear up what is the best way to approach this. Ted and I talked yesterday about the fact that I wasn't sure of a public hearing that had been held and was able to be done on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams. But I talked to Kent at ODark 30 this morning, and he informed me that that Melva Walker is going to be conducting, you know, some kind of, I don't know if it's a, you know, one of her public hearings that she has to have. I don't know if it's CDAC or HUD, whatever it is, but it's federal and state. She is going to do that on Microsoft Teams. What I want to do is that we are able to, if part of the CARES Act was to try to take some of that money and get council chambers as well as the second floor set up to where if people could not be there, you know, in person, there was a camera so that those that joined in could see who else was there and have, you know, have it be a little better interactive and from a microphone kind of perspective, all of that be taken care of. Y'all remember how challenging it was when we did the EDA retreat. Mm-hmm. People couldn't hear, you know, they couldn't really see. We were all trying to navigate that. So I will do whatever, you know, they feel like can give me the best shot at success of capturing, you know, a public hearing and having that being done, you know, officially. Because as you all know, City Council has not met electronically. They have come to council chambers for all of their meetings. And done that. So I think they feel really comfortable with how we've handled all of what we're doing here, and the fact that we have an 800 number, anybody can have access. And I followed along with other state, the Workforce Investment Board meets by Zoom and allows public input, all of that. But if it's possible and it will not cause a problem, I would like to do the meeting in council chambers, because until such time as our office, when we are open again and when we return to some sense of normalcy, we will hopefully have cameras that can do just what I described in the conference room. But if we don't, we will be meeting in council chambers for your meetings going forward so that they can be recorded. So I will let you all know, and I just talked to Ted yesterday, and I'm going to get on that right away so I can let you know. But once again, I won't know. The only thing I'll know is it'll be council chambers. I won't know whether City Hall is going to be open, but if it's not, the doors will be left open for anybody that would want to attend. During the time that the public hearing is taking place, we'll make sure those front doors are open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions or concerns? Anything to bring before the committee? If not, we are officially adjourned. Those on the incentive committee, please